I never thought my own son would kick me out of my dinner table in the house I built with my own hands. Just sit there and keep quiet. Let the adults talk business. Those words hit me like a knife to the chest in front of all our neighbors. Have you ever been betrayed by your own family? Drop a comment and share your story. But the real shock came when my granddaughter whispered with trembling voice, "Grandpa, I heard Mommy and Daddy planning to take all your money and send you away somewhere else." That's when I realized they didn't just want me silent. They wanted me erased from their lives completely. And that was just the beginning of a plan more evil than I could imagine. I'm John, 65 years old, and I still remember that Thursday night like it was yesterday. We were hosting dinner for 3 neighbor couples who used to respect me as a successful architect. But that night, my son David called me by my first name in front of everyone. "John, why don't you just sit there and drink your tea? We adults need to discuss business." The room went silent, like I'd spilled wine all over their perfect tablecloth. Only it wasn't wine. It was my dignity. Mrs. Patterson actually coughed and looked down at her plate, while Mr. Harris suddenly became fascinated with his water glass. For 30 years, that head seat belonged to me. Tonight, I might as well have been part of the wallpaper. Let me start from the beginning, because trouble never shows up wearing a name tag. I built this house in 1987 with my own hands. Hammer strikes still echo in my memory like a heartbeat. When Margaret and I stepped through the door that first night, sawdust clung to my jeans and hope clung to both of us. We planned to raise kids here, watch the sun bleed across these bay windows. She once told me, "This isn't just a house, John. It's a promise." I wonder now, when did that promise start to crack? She passed 3 years ago, leaving me with our son, David, his wife, Sarah, and their 10-year-old daughter, Lily. I thought we were still a family. I thought I still mattered in my own home. The first sign something was wrong came on a Tuesday morning when I walked into the living room, and my favorite brown leather armchair was gone. That chair was my anchor. Seeing it gone felt like someone had ripped out the center of my life and replaced it with a discount fern. For 30 years, that chair had held the scent of old leather and pipe tobacco, the smell of quiet evenings when Margaret would curl up next to me with her book. Now a generic plant sat where my memories used to live. When I asked Sarah about it, she barely looked up from her coffee. "You're getting older, Dad. Lower chairs are safer for you." That same week, the wedding photo of Margaret and me disappeared from the mantelpiece. For 30 years, it had held the most honored spot in our living room, showing us on our wedding day, young and full of dreams. Now it was replaced by a recent photo of just David, Sarah, and Lily at some family event I barely remembered attending. When I asked David where our wedding photo went, he answered with that dismissive tone. "We just wanted to refresh the space and make it more modern, Dad." Modern. The word hit like a hammer, as if love and loyalty had expiration dates. During that same dinner party, our neighbor Mr. Patterson made an innocent comment that cut deeper than he knew. "John, I love what you've done with the living room. Very contemporary. Sarah has such wonderful taste." He meant it as a compliment, but it confirmed what I was starting to understand. My house was being redecorated around me, and everyone could see it except me. I managed a weak smile and nodded, feeling like a stranger commenting on someone else's home improvements. I started noticing other changes, small ones that probably seemed innocent to outsiders, but felt calculated to someone living through them. David and Sarah began calling me John instead of Dad when talking to neighbors or friends. My seat at the dining table, which had always been at the head where the patriarch sits, got moved to a corner spot closer to the kitchen. When guests visited, I got introduced briefly, then effectively ignored for the rest of the conversation. My input on household decisions got dismissed with phrases like, "Don't worry about it," or "We've got this handled." Their trendy restaurant had burned through savings, and now the creditors were circling. Instead of asking for help, they were quietly circling me. I started wondering if every smile at dinner was really a strategy session I wasn't invited to. Phone calls stopped when I entered rooms. Conversations shifted to safe topics whenever I appeared. The house that Margaret and I had filled with laughter and honest discussion had become a theater where I was the only one not reading from the script. One afternoon, Lily came running to me with that worried expression kids get when they sense adult trouble, but don't understand it. "Grandpa, why did Mom take pictures of your papers?" She explained she'd seen Sarah open the safe in my bedroom, photograph some documents with her phone, then carefully put everything back exactly as it was. A 10-year-old whispering about my fortune being taken? It sounded absurd until I saw the fear in her eyes. Maybe I was overthinking things. Turns out I wasn't thinking hard enough. The breaking point came during a rainstorm when the living room ceiling started leaking, water dripping steadily onto the hardwood floors Margaret and I had refinished together. I suggested we fix it immediately, knowing from experience that water damage spreads fast in old houses. David brushed me off with an irritation I'd never heard from him before. "Dad, just let us handle it. We're building the future now. You should just rest and enjoy your retirement." I stayed silent, gripping my teacup so tightly my knuckles turned white, thinking to myself, so I'm just a guest in my own house now. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling where I'd once sketched the house's first design with Margaret. I remembered the weight of her hand in mine as we planned every room, every window, every corner where our family would grow and thrive. The memories of being the family's pillar and decision-maker flooded back, making the current situation even more painful. I was still the same man who'd run a successful architecture firm for 30 years, who'd built this house from scratch, who'd raised a son I was proud of. But somehow I'd become irrelevant in my own story. Then, around midnight, I heard my bedroom door creak open. Lily appeared in her pajamas, tiptoeing across the room with that careful way kids move when they're scared but determined. She climbed onto my bed and whispered like she was telling me a secret that could set the whole house on fire. "Grandpa, tonight they're going to take everything." Should I trust the words of a child, or was my paranoid old mind finally playing tricks on me? My throat dried up like dust. I wanted to say, "That's ridiculous," but what if it wasn't? Lily's tiny hands clutched my sleeve, her fingers anchoring me to reality while my world tilted sideways. Kids sometimes misunderstand adult conversations, but the fear in her voice was real enough to make my chest tighten. I pulled her close and asked gently, "Sweetheart, what exactly did you hear?" She snuggled against me, her voice barely above a whisper. "I heard Mommy and Daddy talking about papers for the house and your land. They said you might go live somewhere with more friends your age, like Mrs. Henderson did." Mrs. Henderson from down the street had been moved to assisted living 6 months ago. "Mommy told me not to tell you because it would make you sad, and I don't want you to be sad, Grandpa." The next morning, I called my bank to check on my savings account, something I'd been doing regularly for 20 years. The clerk's words felt like a trap door opening beneath me. Joint management? I never signed that. My pulse hammered so loud I almost missed the rest. I'm sorry, sir, but this account has been changed to joint management status. You'll need to be present with the co-manager to authorize any transactions over $500. My hand started shaking as I hung up the phone, realizing that my financial independence had been quietly stripped away while I was worrying about missing chairs and photos. Later that afternoon, I was in my study organizing old blueprints when I heard Sarah talking on the phone in the kitchen. Her voice carried that cold, confident tone she used when discussing business deals. The paperwork will be ready by this weekend. He's old and trusting. He'll sign without reading everything carefully. We just need to tell him it's routine tax paperwork from his accountant. Her tone had that casual cruelty of someone discussing a piece of furniture to be moved, not a man who built the roof over her head. I actually had to stop and lean against the doorframe after hearing that. The woman I'd welcomed into my family, who I'd helped through her own parents' deaths, was talking about me like I was some senile old fool they could manipulate at will. That evening, I drove to the office supply store and bought a black composition notebook and 2 reliable pens. I stood in the aisle staring at school supplies, realizing my war chest would start with a $1 notebook and 2 pens. If I was being systematically undermined, I needed to document everything with the same precision I'd once used for architectural plans. If they wanted to play games with paperwork, they'd forgotten who taught David how to read a blueprint. I started recording dates, conversations, suspicious actions. Every small betrayal got written down in careful detail. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was taking back some control, transforming from a passive victim into someone building a case. As I documented their deceptions, a memory slapped me harder than I expected. David was 7, caught red-handed with money from Margaret's purse. I sat him down right here at this kitchen table. Son, a man's word is all he really owns. Trade it away, and you're bankrupt forever. He'd cried, promised he'd never lie again. 30 years later, here we were. Dad, I'll always tell you the truth. His little voice echoed like a ghost in my ears. Funny how promises have expiration dates nobody mentions. To test my growing suspicions, I dropped a casual bomb at dinner. Been thinking about calling my old lawyer friend about updating some documents. David's fork hit his plate like a gunshot. Sarah's water glass stopped halfway to her lips. That panicked glance between them. Pure gold. Dad, you don't need lawyers for simple stuff, David said, his voice pitched too high. We can help you with whatever you need. Their reaction told me everything. They weren't just planning something. They were scared of outside eyes on their masterpiece. The documentation revealed patterns I'd been too trusting to see before. My ATM card had been limited to withdrawals under $1,000 without my knowledge or consent. Several family photos featuring me prominently had been quietly stored away in boxes in the basement. House and property tax bills now showed David's name listed alongside mine, though I'd never signed anything authorizing that change. Most disturbing of all, my mail got sorted by Sarah before I saw it, meaning important financial and legal documents were being intercepted. I spent the next few days observing my son and daughter-in-law with new eyes, watching them the way I used to study building sites for structural problems. David seemed nervous, constantly checking his phone and having hushed conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. Sarah moved through the house with purpose, organizing papers and making phone calls with an efficiency that suggested careful planning. They were operating on some kind of timeline, and whatever they had planned was moving forward whether I participated or not. Awareness didn't come like a light switch. It slammed into me like a door in a storm. This wasn't a misunderstanding, and it sure as hell wasn't normal family tension. This was a blueprint for erasing me, line by line. Independence, savings, dignity, they weren't guarding me. They were gutting me. My pen cracked between my fingers, ink bleeding across the page. Had I really raised a son who could do this? Or had I been blind all along? They weren't trying to help me or protect me. They were trying to eliminate me as an obstacle to their financial survival. The realization was crushing and liberating at the same time. One evening, I was searching through my filing cabinet for old insurance documents when my fingers froze on a page, touching something I'd forgotten even existed. A legal clause, sharp as a hidden blade. My fingers traced the words I had written 3 years ago, words that could change everything. Could this old scrap of paper save me? Or was I about to start a war? 3 lines of text. Cold, clinical, and devastating. One sentence could turn their scheme into ash. The document I'd found was a special clause in my will, something I'd added 3 years ago during the dark months after Margaret's death. Back then, grief had made me paranoid about becoming vulnerable, about people taking advantage of an old widower. My lawyer had suggested adding protective language, and I'd agreed without thinking much about it. The clause stated that if anyone attempted to gain control of my property through deception, coercion, or elder abuse, their inheritance rights would become void immediately. More importantly, it required any legitimate property transfer to be witnessed by my longtime friend and attorney, Michael Wilson. I pressed my palm against the desk, the wood warm like a living pulse under my skin. Margaret would hate this war, but I could almost hear her whisper, steady as breath, "Don't let them break you." My fingers curled until the edge bit into my skin, and for the first time, I felt ready to fight. "Honey, I added this protection when I was drowning in grief, worried about becoming a burden. I never imagined I'd need it against our own son." "What would you do?" The silence felt like permission to do what needed to be done. That weekend, I positioned myself near the kitchen window and watched Sarah stage the dining table with contracts and papers, arranging everything like a battlefield. In the next room, I could hear David rehearsing his pitch, practicing the concerned son routine he'd use to get my signature. "Dad, these are just routine tax forms. The accountant says we need to file them quickly to avoid penalties." His voice carried that false warmth people use when they're about to ask for money. They'd even left a space for my signature in blue ink, knowing I always signed in black. A detail that told me everything I was just a mark to them. David brought home what he called urgent tax paperwork that needed immediate signatures. I examined the documents carefully, using the attention to detail that had made me successful in architecture. Buried under tax forms was a snake in paper skin, a land transfer clause, coiled and ready to strike. Hidden among legitimate-looking forms was a contract that would have given David legal control of my 3 downtown properties. But he'd made a critical mistake, incorrectly listing one of the property parcel numbers. The error made the entire contract legally invalid, revealing their amateur approach and giving me additional leverage. I called Michael Wilson that Tuesday afternoon, catching him at his fishing cabin upstate where he was enjoying retirement. Initially, he thought it was just a social call, but his tone became serious when I carefully explained the situation. "John, listen to me. If you pull this trigger, there's no going back. Holidays, birthdays, they'll all be battlegrounds. I need you to think very carefully about what you're telling me," Michael said. "If what you're describing is accurate, we're talking about elder financial abuse, which is a felony in this state. But once you activate that clause, you're not just protecting yourself, you're potentially destroying David's future forever." David and Sarah's actions became increasingly desperate over the following days. They brought more time-sensitive paperwork requiring my signature. The back door lock to my garden got changed without giving me a key, supposedly for security reasons. During dinner conversations, they casually mentioned visiting really nice senior communities and talked about simplifying Dad's life and reducing his responsibilities. Every suggestion was presented as being for my benefit, but the underlying message was clear. They wanted me gone, and they wanted my signature on documents that would make it legal. The power dynamic in my house started shifting as I prepared my counterattack. When David casually asked why I seemed concerned about the back door key, I looked directly into his eyes and said calmly, "I'm just wondering if you've really thought through all the consequences of your recent decisions." The loaded question made him visibly uncomfortable, and I could see him exchanging worried glances with Sarah. For the first time in months, they were the ones feeling uncertain, sensing that something had changed, but unable to figure out what. That evening, I created a comprehensive evidence file using skills I'd developed managing complex construction projects. I photographed the invalid land transfer contract, documented the unauthorized bank account changes, recorded the timeline of their deceptive actions, and compiled witness statements from Lily's innocent observations. Every piece of evidence was organized, dated, and stored securely. I was building an unshakable case against them, using the same methodical approach I'd once used to design buildings that could withstand any storm. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I wasn't just reacting to their moves, but planning my own strategy. My years of experience dealing with contracts, legal documents, and complex negotiations had given me tools they never suspected I possessed. They'd underestimated the old man they were trying to manipulate, and that mistake was about to become their downfall. The hunter had become the hunted, and they didn't even know the game had changed. As I sat in my study reviewing my evidence file and the protective clause in my will, I reached for the phone to call Michael back with my decision. My phone hovered over his number. One call, and this family Cold War would turn nuclear. Was I ready to burn the bridge I'd spent a lifetime building? The lake shimmered like it did the day Margaret and I brought David here as a boy. Back then, I'd taught him how to build sand castles. Today, I was planning how to dismantle his empire of lies. Michael sat across from me at the quiet cafe, his weathered hands wrapped around a coffee cup that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. When he asked his first question about my situation, the coffee in my mouth turned bitter as medicine. Not from the brew, but from the moral weight of what I was about to unleash. "John, tell me everything," he said, and I could see in his eyes he already knew this wasn't going to be a simple family disagreement. Michael listened to my complete story with growing concern, occasionally asking for clarification or additional details. His face grew darker with each revelation about unauthorized bank changes and photographed documents. When I finished, he sat quietly for several minutes, staring out at the water where families were having picnics and children were laughing. The contrast felt cruel. "John, once you activate this clause, you're not defending a house, you're detonating a family. Can you live with that?" His words hit like a physical blow. Could I? Or had they already destroyed us the moment they decided my dignity was negotiable? After our meeting, I drove to the bank with my evidence folder clutched against my chest like armor. The safety deposit box room felt like a vault beneath a cathedral, all cold marble and hushed reverence. As I slid document after document into the metal box, I kept glancing over my shoulder, feeling eyes that weren't there. Each paper made a whisper as it settled, And when I finally turned the key, the metallic click echoed like I was sealing away more than just evidence. I was locking up 30 years of trust, love, and the naive belief that blood meant loyalty. The weight of that sound followed me to the parking lot. That evening at dinner, I employed Michael's suggested strategy, but I gave it my own twist. I chewed slowly, every second stretching like steel wire. Let them sweat. Let them wonder what I knew. Sarah's voice carried that edge of panic I'd never heard before, but wrapped in honey like always. Dad, those tax documents are really time-sensitive. The accountant says there could be penalties if we don't file them this week. You wouldn't let the IRS punish us, would you? Her smile looked sweet, but her eyes begged for my signature like oxygen. David jumped in with rehearsed support. Yeah, Dad, we're just trying to help you avoid problems. You trust us, right? During my walk around the neighborhood that afternoon, I overheard David talking to our neighbor, Mr. Wilson, through the fence. We've got some exciting future plans for the property, David was saying, his voice carrying that boastful tone he'd used as a teenager showing off. Really going to modernize the whole place, make it work better for everyone. I stood frozen in the hallway of my own home, listening to my son discuss my life's work like it was already his to reshape. The knife twisted deeper when Mr. Wilson responded. That's great, David. Your dad's lucky to have someone thinking ahead for him. Lucky. The word tasted like bile. I started spending more time with Lily, partly for the witness protection Michael had suggested, but mostly because her innocence felt like the only honest thing left in the house. While we worked on a jigsaw puzzle that afternoon, she made a comment that stopped my heart. Grandpa, Mommy told me that one day this house will feel different, just us three. She said it matter-of-factly, like discussing the weather, but her words planted emotional stakes deeper than any legal document. One day, just us three, not four. The casual cruelty of erasing me from my own home, even in a child's mind, crystallized my resolve like nothing else could. Their escalation became obvious over the following days. They invited a real estate agent to just get a market evaluation of the property, hosting the meeting while I was supposedly napping but actually listening from upstairs. They introduced me to dinner guests as Sarah's father-in-law who lives with us, subtly changing my status from homeowner to dependent. More of my personal touches disappeared from common areas, replaced by their choices. Sarah began researching senior living facilities just to have options, leaving brochures where I'd find them. Each action felt like another shovelful of dirt on my grave. During our phone follow-up that week, Michael shared insights from his decades of experience handling family legal disputes. His voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen too many families destroy themselves over money and power. John, I've handled cases like this before. I even discussed similar situations on Dr. Family Drama's podcast about elder financial abuse. Once legal action starts, families rarely recover the same level of trust and warmth they once had. You're not just protecting your assets, you're fundamentally changing the nature of your relationships with these people forever. I realized that David and Sarah were making increasingly desperate moves, which meant they were operating under some kind of deadline. Their restaurant's creditors were probably applying pressure, or they'd made promises to lenders that required immediate action. Something was forcing their hand, and I needed to discover what that pressure point was. Understanding their timeline would help me choose the perfect moment to reveal my knowledge and take back control. They were playing chess, but they'd forgotten I'd taught David the game. That Thursday evening, Michael's email blinked on my screen like a beacon in the darkness. I opened it with trembling fingers, and there it was in bold letters. Elder abuse confirmed. The line between family dispute and felony had just vanished. The phone call came during dinner on Friday evening, just as we were finishing the pot roast I'd taught Sarah to make years ago, when she was still trying to impress me. David's fork froze mid-air. His face drained so fast it looked carved from chalk. "Loan problems. Ownership questions." The voice crackled through the speaker loud enough for all of us to hear fragments. And just like that, their castle of confidence started to crumble. When he hung up, Sarah immediately asked, "What did they say?" David's response came out shaky and uncertain. "The bank is questioning the property ownership documents. They want to meet with all parties involved, including Dad." 10-year-old Lily, sensing the adult conflict but not understanding its complexity, started crying and ran to me. "Grandpa, please don't let our family break apart. I don't want anyone to go away." Her innocent plea cut through the anger and forced everyone to confront the human cost of their actions. This wasn't just about money or property anymore. It was about a little girl watching the only family she'd ever known destroy itself over greed and pride. Her tears made everything real in a way that legal documents and bank statements never could. I looked at my son and daughter-in-law's devastated faces, finally understanding that they'd severely underestimated both my awareness and my legal protection. Their easy solution had become their worst nightmare, and now I held all the power. The question wasn't whether I could destroy them, it was whether I should. And God help us, I wasn't sure of the answer. David didn't just cry. He folded in on himself like a bridge under too much weight. His words stumbled out between gulps of air. "Dad, I panicked. When the restaurant failed and the creditors started calling every day, I couldn't think straight. I thought you had so much, and we had nothing. And maybe you'd want to help us, but wouldn't know how to offer." His voice cracked like a boy again, that same tremor I'd heard when he was 8 and had broken something precious. Hearing that vulnerability punched a hole in my anger, but not enough to make me forget the months of calculated deception. Sarah's confession came through tears that seemed to wash away months of lies. Her mascara streaked like ink bleeding down paper. I saw friends lose homes, kids yanked out of schools. I swore it wouldn't happen to Lily, even if it meant burning everything else. Her honesty was painful but real, revealing the frightened person underneath the cold schemer I'd been fighting. I was terrified, Dad. I grew up poor, and when I saw what financial ruin looked like, I convinced myself we were just borrowing against our future inheritance, that you'd want us to have security even if you didn't know how to give it to us. Michael called that evening to explain the legal reality hanging over all of us like a storm cloud. His voice was steady, almost too steady. "John, you're holding a grenade with the pin already out. Press charges and they're felons. Drop it, and you live with this forever." His words clung to the silence like smoke. I literally held their future in my hands. I could choose prosecution, which would likely result in felony convictions and prison time, or I could choose family resolution. But I couldn't have both. The law didn't allow for middle ground when it came to protecting vulnerable adults from financial abuse. I stared at my son and Sarah, 2 grown adults folded in on themselves like broken umbrellas. My chest burned with a hunger for justice, to make them feel every ounce of humiliation they'd handed me. Then my eyes hit Margaret's photo, catching the lamplight, her smile soft as rain after drought. Her voice echoed, not as words but as a weight in my gut. Don't burn the bridge you need to cross. Was I about to honor her? Or bury her memory under my pride? The glass frame slipped in my damp fingers, and for a second I almost let it fall. Here's the deal, I said, sliding the will across the table so they could see the protective clause that had saved me. You restore everything you tampered with. No more secrets. And you'll tell Lily the truth, because I won't let lies be our family's foundation. David swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing like he was choking on his shame. Sarah nodded, the fight gone from her eyes, replaced by something that looked like relief. Complete restoration of my legal rights and property control. You must find legitimate solutions to your financial problems without involving my assets. And we're all going to family counseling to rebuild whatever trust might still be possible. The restoration began immediately with symbolic but important changes. I pulled my chair back to the head of the table, not to gloat, but to remind them who'd built this roof over all of us. My leather armchair returned to its place of honor in the living room. Margaret's wedding photo went back to the mantelpiece where it belonged. David and Sarah began addressing me as Dad again, but with genuine respect earned through crisis rather than automatic family obligation. These weren't just furniture arrangements, they were declarations that the natural order of this family was being restored. 2 weeks later, we sat in a family counselor's office with uncomfortable chairs and artificial plants that fooled no one. The therapist, a patient woman with kind eyes, created a safe space for truths that had been buried under months of deception. Lily, sitting between her parents with the fearless honesty only children possess, asked the question that made all the adults squirm. Why did you want Grandpa gone? The silence stretched like a held breath until Sarah finally answered, her voice barely above a whisper. We didn't want you gone, sweetie. We were scared and made terrible choices. David added, we forgot that family means asking for help, not taking it. Michael called me privately the next evening with a warning that planted seeds of lingering tension. John, I need you to understand something. If they slip again, even once, you report it immediately. Love doesn't erase criminal records, and second chances don't exist in elder abuse cases. The law won't be as forgiving as you've been. His words reminded me that while I'd chosen mercy, I couldn't afford to be naive. Trust would have to be rebuilt slowly, with eyes wide open and safeguards in place. David started looking for stable employment instead of risky business ventures, swallowing his pride to accept a position at a local architecture firm where his experience was valued. Sarah began managing their finances transparently, including me in household decisions and treating me as the respected family patriarch rather than an obstacle to eliminate. Both began the slow, difficult process of earning back trust they'd almost destroyed forever. Progress was measured in small gestures, honest conversations, and the gradual return of family dinners without hidden agendas. For the first time in months, we sat down for dinner together with the possibility of genuine healing, though everyone understood the road ahead would be long and difficult. The damage to our relationships was real and substantial, but so was the foundation of love that had survived their betrayal. As we began this fragile process of rebuilding trust, Dinner ended without fireworks. But as I cleared my plate, one thought stuck and like a splinter. Had I just rebuilt my family, or handed my betrayers another chance to break me? 3 months later, the house didn't just look different, it felt different. No whispers behind doors, no knives hidden in smiles. Only the hum of a family trying to rebuild on solid ground. David found steady work at a local architecture firm, accepting a junior position that wounded his pride, but provided reliable income. Sarah learned to manage money honestly, abandoning get-rich-quick schemes for careful budgeting and transparent financial planning. Most importantly, they both began treating me with genuine respect, born from understanding rather than fear or calculated manipulation. The change wasn't just in their actions, it was in the air we all breathed. One evening, David approached me in my study, hands trembling around a mug of coffee he hadn't touched. "Dad, I didn't just steal money. I tried to steal you, from yourself." His voice carried something I hadn't heard in months, genuine remorse without calculation behind it. "What I did wasn't just about financial desperation. I tried to steal your dignity, your independence, your right to matter in your own home. I can't undo that damage, but I can spend every day proving I'm worthy of your forgiveness." For the first time in months, his words didn't feel like manipulation. They felt like confession. Sarah's transformation was equally remarkable, visible in gestures both large and small. She handed me the safe key without me asking, a gesture louder than any speech. No more secrets. No more locks between us. The woman who once photographed my documents in secret now helped me organize my important papers and included me in every household decision. She brought me coffee each morning and genuinely asked about my day, my health, my opinions on everything from dinner plans to Lily's school activities. Her respect wasn't performed for my benefit. It was real, earned through the hard work of rebuilding trust, one honest conversation at a time. Lily, the child who'd saved her grandfather with an innocent warning, often made observations that cut straight to the heart of our family's healing. One afternoon, while we worked in the garden together, she looked up at me with dirt on her nose and wisdom in her eyes. "Grandpa, you didn't yell. You didn't hit. You just made them tell the truth. That's cooler than superheroes." Her simple summary of events reminded me that strength wasn't about power or revenge. It was about standing firm until others had no choice but to rise to meet you or walk away entirely. The house itself reflected our restored family dynamic. The frame holding Margaret's wedding photo gleamed under afternoon light, her smile catching sun like a blessing on the choices I'd made. I sat in my leather armchair every evening, but now family members naturally gathered around me to share their day, rather than avoiding my presence. New family photos showed me prominently at the center where I belonged. I managed my finances completely independently while providing structured help for David and Sarah's debt recovery through proper legal channels. Every decision was made transparently, every conversation honest. Thanksgiving that year carried weight that previous holidays had lacked. We gathered around the dinner table with gratitude that felt earned rather than expected, though the healing process revealed itself in small, awkward moments. Pauses stretched a beat too long when certain topics arose. Smiles sometimes felt forced when old wounds brushed too close to conversation. But underneath the surface, tensions ran a current of hope. The understanding that broken things could be mended if everyone committed to the work. I said grace, thanking God for family, forgiveness, and the courage to stand up for what's right. When everyone joined hands around the table, the circle felt complete again, but stronger than before. As we began clearing dishes, I caught myself thinking about the road that brought us here. You can't rebuild trust like you flip a switch. Some days are smooth, others feel like walking on broken glass. But we're walking together now, and that counts for something. David and Sarah were learning the hard way that debt doesn't disappear with magic tricks. Real solutions take real work, real time, real sacrifice. The process was teaching them lessons I should have drilled into them years ago, back when they thought shortcuts were smart instead of stupid. Looking around my living room now, seeing my chair where it belongs, my family gathered without masks or games, I finally understood something. Victory isn't about crushing people. It's about standing so damn firm they either rise up to meet you or walk away. I didn't win by being the loudest or the meanest. I won by refusing to disappear. Age doesn't mean invisible. Experience doesn't mean irrelevant. And fighting for your place at the table? That's not selfish. That's survival. Sometimes you have to risk everything to save what actually matters. The story closes with me teaching Lily how to draw architectural plans at my old drafting table, her small fingers wrapped around a pencil like it holds secrets. Her pencil scratched against paper, tracing lines that might outlast us both. "Grandpa," she said, not looking up from her work, "why do buildings need strong bottoms?" I smiled, thinking of everything we'd been through. "Same reason families do, sweetheart. Without something solid underneath, the first storm knocks everything down." She nodded like that made perfect sense. Maybe it does. I didn't just protect my money. I took back my story, and nobody gets to rewrite the ending but me. So there you have it. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones sitting right across from you at dinner every night. I keep thinking about that moment when I had to choose between destroying my family or letting them destroy me. And honestly, I'm still not sure I made the right call. Maybe some of you think I was too soft on David and Sarah. Maybe others think I should have just signed those papers and kept the peace. But here's what I learned through all this mess. Your dignity isn't negotiable, no matter how much it costs to keep it. Age doesn't make you invisible, and family doesn't give anyone the right to steal from you, whether it's your money or your self-respect. I used to think love meant saying yes to everything. Turns out sometimes love means saying no so loud they can't pretend they didn't hear you. The crazy part? Teaching David and Sarah that lesson probably saved them from becoming the kind of people who could live with what they almost did. Trust me, that guilt would have eaten them alive eventually. If this story hit home for you, if you've got your own family drama, or maybe you're dealing with someone who thinks you're too old to matter, drop a comment below. I read every single one, and sometimes your stories teach me more than my own. And hey, if you enjoyed this wild ride and want to help me keep telling these stories, there's a little thanks button right under this video where you can buy me a coffee or just show some love. No pressure though. Your time and attention mean everything to me already. But definitely hit that like button if this one got to you, and subscribe if you want more stories about standing up for yourself when the world tries to push you down. Remember, your story matters, your voice matters, and you're never too old to fight back. I'll catch you in the next one, friends.